It is late. The day is finally done. The dishes are drying, the lights are low, and for the first time since morning, your hands are still. And when they are finally still, that is when you notice them. You notice the pull across the knuckles, the sting in the tiny splits near the thumb, the roughness in the heel of the palm, the way the skin looks tired before the rest of you admits it is. Most people live with that and call it normal. They say, well, that is just what happens when you work. They say, my hands are always like this in winter. They say, I'll put something on later. And later either never comes, or it comes in the form of a perfumed cream rubbed on in a hurry, a little moisture on top, a little softness for an hour, and then by morning the same tightness is back again. Now here is where people get curious, because every so often an old home remedy comes around again, and everybody starts asking the same question. What actually happens to your body when you mix castor oil and baking soda? Not what people claim, not what folklore promises, not what a dramatic thumbnail shouts at you. What actually happens? Tonight, let's talk about that plainly. No magic, no fake miracle, no pretending a kitchen remedy is the same thing as medicine. Because the truth is more interesting than the hype. When people use castor oil and baking soda together, what they are usually trying to affect is not the whole body in some mysterious, deep way. They are usually trying to affect the surface physiology of the body, especially the skin of the hands, feet, elbows, heels, or other rough, dry places. And if you understand a little about how the skin works, then the whole thing makes sense. Your skin is not just a covering. It is not wrapping paper stretched over muscle and bone. It is a living barrier, a working organ, a border wall with intelligence. The outermost layer of your skin, the part you can see and touch, is called the stratum corneum. That sounds complicated, but think of it this way. It is your body's weatherproof coat. It is made of dead, flattened skin cells held together in a structure that works a bit like brick and mortar. The cells are the bricks. The fats and proteins around them are the mortar. When that outer layer is healthy, it holds water in and keeps irritation out. When it is damaged, water escapes too fast. The surface roughens, and the nerve endings beneath begin to complain. That complaint is what you feel as tightness, as stinging, as roughness, as itching, as that dry paper feeling when you rub your fingers together. A lot of people think dryness means the skin needs moisture in the casual sense, but physiologically, the problem is often this. The skin barrier is leaking more water than it ought to. That water loss has a name. It is called transepidermal water loss. And when it speeds up, the skin becomes less flexible, more fragile, and more easily irritated. Good RX, National Eczema Society. So when somebody reaches for castor oil and baking soda, what they are often doing, whether they know the science words or not, is trying to do two separate jobs. First, remove debris and rough buildup from the surface. Second, slow water loss and support the barrier afterward. That is the theory. Now let's walk through what each ingredient is really doing. Let's begin with the baking soda, because this is where people get the most carried away. Baking soda is sodium bicarbonate. In water, it creates an alkaline environment. That matters because your skin normally leans slightly acidic at the surface. People sometimes call that the acid mantle. That slightly acidic surface helps support normal barrier function and the overall behavior of the outer skin layer. pH is not a trendy skincare word. It is part of how the barrier behaves. Changes in pH can influence how the outer layer sheds, how cohesive it is, and how well it protects. JAAD. Now hear me carefully. That does not mean baking soda is poison for the skin, and it does not mean it is a miracle. It means it must be understood for what it is. Used gently and occasionally, baking soda can act like a mild abrasive and help loosen rough surface buildup. In certain contexts, mildly alkaline soaking has been discussed in dermatology for helping scale lift more easily. But that is very different from saying everyone should scrub their skin with it every day. JAAD. That is the first truth. The second truth is this. When you rub baking soda over the skin, you are not detoxing your body. You are not pulling toxins through the pores. You are not alkalizing your blood. You are not changing your internal organs. Your kidneys and lungs handle your body's acid-base balance. A paste on the hands is not doing that job. What it may be doing is much simpler. It may be loosening the layer of dead cells, soil, oil residue, and hardened roughness that ordinary washing did not remove. That can make the skin feel smoother immediately, cleaner immediately, less coated, less burdened. And that matters because thick, uneven buildup can make skincare sit on top of the surface instead of spreading well. When the outer surface is too rough, anything you apply afterward has a harder time coating evenly. So if a person soaks or lightly rubs with baking soda and then rinses, here is what they may notice. The skin feels less gritty. The edges of flaky patches feel flatter. The fingers feel cleaner around the nails. The rough heels of the palms feel less armored. But there is a line here, and people cross it all the time. Too much scrubbing damages what it is supposed to help. If the barrier is already cracked, irritated, inflamed, or compromised, repeated abrasion can make the problem worse. Skin that is already losing water too quickly does not need aggressive friction. It needs intelligent handling. So the physiology is simple. Gentle exfoliation may remove surface roughness. Aggressive rubbing may increase irritation, barrier disruption, and sting. That is why the old idea only makes sense when the first step is done with restraint, not hard, not often, not on open splits, not on angry raw skin. Now let's come to the castor oil, because this is where people expect drama, and what they get instead is a very practical kind of help. Castor oil is thick. That thickness is not a side detail. That thickness is the whole story. A thin oil spreads and disappears quickly. A thick oil sits longer, coats longer, and behaves more like a seal. Castor oil contains a fatty acid called ricinoleic acid, and that is one reason it gets talked about so much in skincare. Research on castor oil for skin is still limited, and serious people should say that out loud. But the available discussion around it points to a few plausible benefits. It can act as an occlusive layer, help reduce water loss, and may support a softer, more flexible surface when used appropriately. WebMD Good RX Occlusive is one of those words that sounds technical until you translate it into normal life. An occlusive is simply something that helps lock water in by forming a coating over the skin. That matters because after washing, soaking, or bathing, the skin often contains water near the surface. But unless that water is held there, a lot of it escapes. So when you apply a thick oil or ointment to damp or recently washed skin, you are not feeding the skin in some mystical sense. You are helping trap moisture and reduce the rate at which it evaporates away. NHS, National Eczema Society. This is where people begin to understand why the order matters. If you oil dry, dirty, rough skin without first cleaning or softening the surface, you may simply trap the roughness underneath and get a greasy hand. But if the skin is first washed or soaked, then lightly dried and then coated while it still holds some water, the oil has something worth sealing in. That is not old wives' talk. That is barrier logic. So what happens physiologically when castor oil is applied after a soak? The outer layer of the skin is slightly more hydrated. The surface is more flexible. Microfissures, tiny dry cracks, are under less tension. Water loss slows down under the film of oil. The skin stays soft longer, and because the surface is less brittle, it often hurts less to bend. That last part matters more than people think. A lot of the discomfort of dry hands is not deep joint pain. It is surface tension. It is tiny splits being pulled apart when you close your hand. It is dryness around movement points, knuckles, finger webs, thumb bends, where every motion reopens the same fragile places. When a thick layer reduces friction and stiffness at the surface, the nerves underneath stop sounding the alarm quite so loudly. And that is why people say, "My hands felt better by morning." Not because the oil rebuilt a body overnight, because it improved the conditions at the surface. That distinction matters. There is another reason the overnight method works better than the rushed daytime method. Time. People always underestimate time in physiology. If you rub something on your hands and then touch a phone, a towel, a steering wheel, a dish, a doorknob, half of it ends up somewhere else. But if you apply a thick layer at night and then cover it with cotton gloves, you reduce transfer, increase contact time, and keep the skin in a more protected microenvironment for hours. That long, quiet contact matters. Dermatology guidance for very dry hands often leans on this same logic. Moisturize thoroughly and in some cases use cotton gloves overnight to support healing and comfort. NHS. Now let's talk about the part people rarely describe well, the feeling of warmth. Sometimes people using castor oil and baking soda also use a warm soak or a warm cloth. And here again, the internet overreaches. Warmth is not repairing the soul of the hand, but warmth does have sensible short-term effects. Warm water can soften hardened outer skin. It can increase comfort. It can make stiff hands feel looser for a while. It can calm the feeling of strain after repetitive gripping. That is not fantasy. That is why warm compresses and warm soaks are commonly recommended for comfort in certain hand stiffness situations. The effect is supportive and soothing, not magical and not curative. Royal Devon, NHS. So if you take the whole routine together, gentle soak or light cleanse, careful use of baking soda if appropriate, then castor oil, then overnight covering, the body is not undergoing a hidden chemical revolution. It is undergoing a much simpler sequence. The rough outer layer is softened, surface debris is reduced, water is introduced to the outer skin. That water is then trapped more effectively. Tension across the dry surface decreases. Movement becomes less painful. The barrier gets a better chance to recover. That is the honest version. And maybe the honest version is better, because now you know when it makes sense and when it does not. For example, if somebody has mild dryness from weather, frequent hand washing, or manual work, then yes, a routine like this may bring comfort. If somebody has chronic eczema, severe dermatitis, infection, swelling, oozing, or deep painful fissures, then this is not the place to be improvising with kitchen ingredients. That person may need a proper emollient, an ointment, irritant avoidance, or even prescription treatment. Medical guidance for dry, inflamed, or dermatitis-prone hands emphasizes emollients, avoiding triggers, protecting the hands, and treating inflammation appropriately when needed. NHS, National Eczema Society. That brings us to an uncomfortable truth about home remedies. Sometimes people reach for them not because they are better, but because they are available. And availability is powerful. A bottle in the cupboard gets used. A product at the pharmacy gets postponed. A simple ritual gets repeated. A complicated plan gets abandoned. So the success of a remedy is not only about chemistry, it is also about whether people will actually do it. That is why these old routines survive. They are simple enough to repeat, but simplicity is only useful when it is tied to sense. So let me tell you how a careful, physiology-aware version of this routine would sound if we stripped away the hype. You come in from a long day. Your hands are not bleeding, not infected, not badly inflamed, just rough, tired, and dry. You wash with lukewarm water, not scalding hot. You avoid harsh soap if the skin is already fragile. If there is stubborn grime or thick roughness, you use a very small amount of baking soda with plenty of gentleness, or you skip it altogether and simply soak. You rinse thoroughly. You do not attack the skin. You do not polish yourself like furniture. Then, while the hands are still slightly damp or freshly dried, you apply a thick layer of castor oil, or, honestly, another heavy emollient if castor oil does not suit you. You work it over the knuckles, around the nails, across the finger joints, and into the dry ridges of the palm. You cover the hands. You leave them alone. You give the barrier time. That is what you are really giving the body in that moment. Time without friction. Time without repeated washing, time with less water loss, time to recover flexibility. And recovery of flexibility is not cosmetic. It is mechanical. Dry skin cracks because it stops bending well. Healthy skin bends. Dehydrated skin resists. Then it splits. Once you understand that, you stop looking for miracles and start respecting mechanics. People also ask whether castor oil goes deep into the body. Usually what they mean is, does it penetrate past the surface and change things internally? The answer people need is sober. Topical products can certainly interact with the skin. Some ingredients influence the outer barrier. Some penetrate more than others. But rubbing castor oil and baking soda on the hands is not the same as treating systemic disease. It is not a deep organ intervention. It is skincare. Potentially useful skincare for some people, but still skincare. And that honesty is important because once exaggeration begins, disappointment follows close behind. Now, another part of physiology that deserves mention is inflammation. When skin gets too dry, it is not only dry, often it becomes more vulnerable to irritation. The barrier is compromised, and that can create a cycle. Dryness leads to microdamage. Microdamage leads to inflammation. Inflammation further disrupts the barrier, and the barrier then loses even more water. A thick protective layer can sometimes help interrupt that cycle by reducing exposure and slowing water loss. Some discussions of castor oil also note possible anti-inflammatory properties associated with ricinoleic acid, though the evidence is not strong enough to justify wild claims. So the safe thing to say is this: castor oil may support comfort and hydration, but it should not be sold as a cure-all. WebMD Good RX. And then there is the matter of sensitivity. Natural does not automatically mean harmless. Some people tolerate castor oil very well. Some do not. Some may break out. Some may itch. Some may feel stinging. Some people with already reactive skin may do better with a plain dermatologist-recommended ointment. That is why patch testing makes sense. And it is why you never assume that because something is old, it is right for everyone. Human physiology is not a single body copied 8 billion times. It is variation stacked on variation. If your skin clogs easily, a heavy oil may be too much. If your skin is extremely reactive, the wrong product can backfire. If your hands are raw, abrasive cleansing may be the opposite of helpful. So wisdom here is not devotion to the remedy. Wisdom is knowing the remedy's lane. And the lane is this: it may help rough, dry, overworked outer skin feel softer, more flexible, and more protected. That is enough. It does not need to be more than that. Now, if I were speaking to someone tempted by exaggerated health claims, I would say this: be very cautious of anyone who tells you this mixture pulls toxins from the joints, alkalizes the body through the skin, dissolves internal inflammation, or rebuilds collagen overnight. Those phrases are designed to sound deep while avoiding measurable meaning. The body is already miraculous enough without inventing fake mechanisms. Your skin already performs an astonishing job every day. It regulates water loss. It senses temperature. It helps defend against outside insult. It coordinates repair. And when you help it even a little, with reduced friction, sensible hydration, barrier support, and time, it often responds beautifully. That is not less impressive because it is ordinary. That is more impressive because it means your body does not always need drama. Sometimes it needs conditions, better conditions, gentler handling, more consistency, less nonsense. So, what happens to your body when you mix castor oil and baking soda? If used carefully on the right kind of dry, rough skin, here is the best plain answer. The baking soda may help remove rough surface buildup. The soak may soften the outer layer and improve comfort. The castor oil may reduce water loss by forming a protective coating. The skin may become more flexible overnight. The tightness may ease. The roughness may lessen. The tiny dry cracks may stop pulling so hard. Your hands may simply feel more like they belong to you again. Not transformed. Not healed of everything, just less burdened. And in a world that keeps trying to sell you miracle language, that kind of honest relief is worth respecting. So if you try it intelligently. Use restraint with the baking soda. Use common sense with broken skin. Use patch testing with castor oil. Use nighttime to your advantage. And if what you have is not simple dryness but real dermatitis, infection, swelling, or pain that keeps returning, then stop experimenting and get proper care. Because the body deserves more than trends. It deserves understanding. And perhaps that is the real appeal of these old routines when they are at their best. Not that they are magical, not that they replace medicine, but that they remind you to pay attention to the body before it begins to shout. A rough hand does not become rough all at once. A cracked heel does not split in 1 minute. The body whispers long before it complains. Tightness is a whisper. Dryness is a whisper. That papery feeling after washing is a whisper. That sting at the thumb crease is a whisper. And a good nightly ritual, whether it is castor oil and careful cleansing or a modern fragrance-free ointment, is a way of answering the whisper before it becomes a wound. That is what people are really looking for when they ask about mixtures like this. Not chemicals alone, not folklore alone, but a way to care for a tired body without being lied to. And if you remember only one thing from all of this, remember this. The body changes at the surface before it changes in spectacle. Health is often quiet. Damage is often gradual. Relief is often practical. So mixing castor oil and baking soda does not unlock secret healing powers hidden from modern science. But yes, used with restraint and understanding, it may help the outer physiology of dry, overworked skin by softening buildup, reducing water loss, improving flexibility, and making movement feel easier for a while. And sometimes, after a long day, easier for a while is not a small thing. It is the beginning of recovery. It is the body getting one peaceful night. It is the hand unclenching. It is the skin holding on to its water a little better till morning. It is one less sting at the knuckle, one less pull at the thumb, one less reason to ignore what the body has been trying to say. And that may be the most useful truth of all. Not every remedy needs to be legendary to be worth doing. Some things are good because they are simple. Some things endure because they answer a real physical need. And some of the best care you can give the body is not dramatic treatment at all, but steady respect for how it is built. So the next time your hands feel overwashed, overworked, weather-beaten, or worn thin by the season, do not ask first what sounds magical. Ask what makes physiological sense. Ask what protects the barrier. Ask what reduces water loss. Ask what lowers friction. Ask what gives the skin time to recover. That is where the truth lives. And unlike hype, the truth still works when the camera is off. Quick science anchors behind this version. This script's physiology framing is grounded in mainstream skin barrier guidance. Emollients work by forming an oily layer that traps water and helps protect the skin barrier, and they're especially useful when applied after washing while the skin is still moist. National Eczema Society (NHS) castor oil is commonly described as a thick, occlusive oil. Evidence is limited, but it may help reduce transepidermal water loss and support skin comfort while still carrying risks like irritation or clogged pores in some people. GoodRx WebMD skin pH matters for barrier function, and while mildly alkaline soaking has been discussed in dermatology for certain scaling conditions, that is not the same thing as proving baking soda is ideal for everyone's skin or for frequent scrubbing. JAAD. Safety-wise, published cosmetic safety review material generally found castor oil-derived ingredients broadly safe in normal cosmetic use, while still acknowledging that irritation or sensitization can occur in some individuals, especially those with already compromised skin.